Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, what's going on, my friends? Now 3 o'clock. The Trailblazers are back in action tomorrow night with the Lakers in town, along with Luka and LeBron. Tip-off from Moda at 7. Chris Burkhart will have game day at 5 live from Moda here on 620 Rip City Radio. Luka Doncic expected to be off a minutes restriction when action resumes. There's one game tonight in the NBA. The Lakers will host the Hornets at Crypto.com Arena. That is a makeup game due to the wildfires down in Southern California. Portland has 27 games remaining. And remember, all Trailblazer games stream live on the iHeartRadio app. Ben Golliver joins me today at 4:20 from the Washington Post, and Michael Holton in studio for Holton on Hoops at 5:20 from the NFL with Kellen Moore now in New Orleans as the head coach. The Eagles have promoted Kevin Patullo to offensive coordinator, and the NFL salary cap expected to increase by at least $22 million when the new league year hits in 2025. And after a meeting, the college football commissioners agree there needs to be tweaks to seeding the playoff. Greg Sankey said he would vote for change, but it has to be unanimous.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
99.9% of the time, I'm going to know what's going on. The one time I didn't was the one time we all didn't, per se, know what was going on. It was a shock to everybody. Who was in it was a shock, right? I always knew the affinity that was had for AD from Nico's perspective, so the destination wasn't really a shock. The timing of it was a shock, and obviously who was involved was a shock. But you don't move mountains with everybody knowing. You can't. And so I'm glad I didn't know. And I'm glad that whoever else didn't know, because it probably wouldn't have happened if you did know.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, that was LeBron's guy, Rich Paul, the head man for Clutch, in regard to the trade. Luka Doncic going to the Lakers for Anthony Davis and a first-round pick. I still can't believe it went down. The good news is we get to see Luka and LeBron tomorrow night at Moda Center. Well, at least we hope so. The problem is that game that had to be rescheduled due to the wildfires down in Los Angeles is being played tonight. Lakers and Hornets down at Crypto.com Arena. So what I'm hoping for is Lakers blow out the Hornets, Luka and LeBron get plenty of rest come fourth quarter, and then we get to see both guys tomorrow, because that would be the ultimate buzzkill if one of those two guys is not playing. Luka's going to play. It would be LeBron who would take a night off, but hopefully he feels reinvigorated with Luka on the squad, and he'll get a chance to go tomorrow. Hey, LeBron, you and I have not always, been eye to eye on everything, but I ask one thing from you. Please play tomorrow. I can always tell when there's a big Blazer game or when there's a team in town that people want to see. I can always gauge it based on how many ticket requests I get. The players think they have a problem. Try working for the team flagship and then have people hit you up for tickets nonstop. It's been a nonstop request over the last 48 hours. And I love it, too, when people hit me up last second and they're like, hey, man, you got tickets for the game tomorrow night? Oh, you mean the Laker game with Luka and LeBron? Yeah, let me just grab those for you. Good gracious, people going crazy, but that's what Luka does. And that's why the Mavericks are crazy for trading that guy away. We'll talk to Ben Golliver about this, but one of the big miscalculations that the Mavericks had, and I don't know how this is even possible, they, for some reason, did not foresee the reaction from their fan base because of the popularity of Luka Doncic. Hey, morons, let me explain this to you. Luka is a global superstar. He is a top 3 player in the world, and he's one of the most exciting players to watch. And the fan base absolutely adores him. And yet you traded him away, and then you were stunned because fans showed up with a coffin and were chanting, he's not fat, bring him back. Yeah, he's popular. People love him. Imagine the Trailblazers trading Dame in his prime or just before his prime. You think there might be an uproar? You think people might protest out at the Rose Garden? I think that's possible. Take any franchise, you start dealing away superstars, fans are not going to react in a good way. The interesting thing about the NBA, though, that I think is different from the NFL or even college football, and I know this from growing up, and you probably have friends like this too, when it comes to football teams, fans typically do not walk away from their team. They're with their team no matter what, through thick and thin. I was a Bronco fan long before they went back-to-back with John Elway, and I had to listen to all the jokes about how they don't belong in a bowl. They were 0-4 in Super Bowls. John Elway got crushed in 3 Super Bowls. They were a joke. They didn't belong, all of that. And then finally they won a title, and all that conversation was gone. But I never walked away from my team. The only time I ever boycotted the Broncos is when Josh McDaniels was head coach. And I saw a poll question come out from Denver today. Who is a worse coach, Nat Hackett or Josh McDaniels? It's Josh McDaniels. It's not even close. Hackett was a different kind of dumb, but Josh McDaniels was a disaster. He brought shame to the franchise. He embarrassed Pat Bowlen. He was an a-hole to work with, and the players couldn't stand him. And he was a disaster. And then he followed that up with an even bigger disaster, possibly with the Raiders, when the same thing happened. He alienated everyone, didn't produce, and the owner ran him out of town. And now where is he? Well, he's back to, I think, the New England Patriots, doing what he does best, being an offensive coordinator. But football fans don't walk away from their team usually. And college football fans, they live and die with their team. And a lot of them graduated from the school, so they don't walk away from that. But the NBA is different. And I can attest to this because I grew up, watching NBA games constantly. And I had teams. When I lived in Denver, I took interest in the Nuggets because they were on TV all the time. And then when I moved out in 87 to the Northwest, the only thing I knew about Portland and the Northwest, because I'd never been here, is that they had Clyde Drexler. I'm not even joking. When my parents had the family meeting at the dinner table in Colorado about moving or potentially moving to the Northwest, I had a little poster in my room. And you think I'm making this up. I'm not. You got to keep in mind, young little 12-year-old Chad had no idea about the world. But I knew about basketball players. And I had this poster in my room called Sultans of Slam. And I think there were like 6 different players on it. MJ, Dominique, different guys who could get up above the rim and jam. It was a sweet poster. I think I still have it somewhere tucked in one of those little cardboard tubes or something. I think it's in storage. But one of the guys on that Sultans of Slam poster was Clyde Drexler. One of those dunks where he's like way above the rim, getting ready to tomahawk, and his, legs are bent at the knees, and it looks like he's flying. My reasoning was very simple. When mom and dad were like, hey, what do you think about moving out to the Northwest? I'm like, well, I don't know anything about Portland, but they have Clyde Drexler, so it can't be that bad. And that was my logic there. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, basketball fans, they'll follow players. Like I had teams, like I was a Blazer fan, but I had different players I loved to watch throughout the years. I wanted to check out MJ because he was awesome. I paid attention to Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars because I thought they were cool. The Bad Boy Pistons were fun to watch. The Human Highlight Film, one of the greatest nicknames in the history of basketball, Dominique Wilkins. And the Hawks were on TBS all the time. The Chicago Bulls were on WGN all the time, so I watched their games. And, of course, I love Larry Bird. And I'd watch the Celtics whenever they were on TV. So I had different players I followed, and that continued on throughout time. Kobe Bryant, not a Laker fan, but I love Kobe, and I'd watch Kobe play. So I had different players I followed. My guess would be with a lot of these ticked-off Maverick fans, they're just going to abandon the franchise, and they'll become quasi-Laker fans, or at least they'll be Luka fans and continue to root for him because they have an attachment to him, which I understand. I feel the same way about Dame. I'm not a Bucks fan, but I watch Milwaukee games so I can watch Dame, and I want to see him get off and perform. And if they end up winning a championship, that'd be cool because I want Dame to have success. I'm a fan of him, and I'll follow him. I'll watch him. I like the way he balls. There's other guys like that, too, like Mike Conley Jr., not one of the superstars in the league, but he's like an Iron Man. I continue to marvel at how well he plays at this advanced stage of his career. Good teammate, good player. He's nice. Anthony Edwards. And now I'm starting to become a Nikola Jokic fan because I just acknowledge that he's great. One of the best players in the world. The best player in the world. And he reminds me of Bird, and I like the way he plays. So there you have it. I have different players I follow now. Like on the Trailblazers right now, like Denny Avdia, big fan. And Tamani Kamara, big fan. I would watch those guys here in Portland or anywhere else because I want to see them do well. And I like the way they compete. So those Maverick fans, bitter. So we'll cover that with Ben Golliver. The Portland Golf Show is coming up. And Dick Stevens, who runs that, Giddy Up, he's going to join the show coming up at 3:20. And we'll get the latest on the Portland Golf Show. The technology and some of the different things they have to help your game now is amazing. I went through a practice session last night. I had a lesson on Saturday at Golf Tech, and then I did some practice time last night. I can get in there 3 days a week and practice. And so I was working on 60-yard chip shots, 55-yard, 60-yard chip shots with the 60 degree, and working on some of the different techniques that my coach Nick had worked with me on. But what's cool about the technology now is with the simulators at Golf Tech, when I'm going through a practice session, I can pull up basically any course in the world. And so last night I pulled up the Portland Golf Club, and I was working on chip shots on hole number 4. And it was awesome to be able to have that because it's got the exact lay of the course, and the green is set up exactly how you would expect it to be. And this one had a slight tilt from left to right. And so I was working on the chip shots, but it just blows me away that you have the technology now where you can have the simulator. You can pull up any course that you play and be able to practice on that to visualize and work on different shots. And so the whole process that I was working on that Nick went over with me that we were focusing on is having a process where you've got your target, you know where you want the ball to land or where you are going to attempt to have the ball land. What about the rollout of the ball based on how the green, the contour of the green, what's it going to do? What about the club selection? What club are you going to use and what type of swing? And then the trajectory. Do you want to hit something higher with a little more loft so it lands softly? Do you want to do a little punch shot, if it's windy? And then, of course, the swing length. And so I was working through that process. But the technology now and the ability to pull up these different courses, and then you're hitting into a big screen where it feels like you're on the course, it's mind-blowing. They didn't have this stuff when I was younger. So it's pretty cool to see the breakout and the way things are. I love it. So we'll talk about the Portland Golf Show with Dick Stevens coming up at 3:20. It's going to be out at the Expo Center. And then Ben Golliver, Washington Post at 4:20. He's down in L.A., so he's got great insight to the Lakers and the whole situation with Luka. I want to get his take on the two forwards, what he sees from Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara. And then at 5:20, Holton on Hoops will be in studio. We'll get his take on All-Star Weekend. He was down there in San Francisco. We'll get his take on the final 27 games for the Portland Trailblazers, what he wants to see from the young guys in terms of development, especially Scoot Henderson, and what he thinks the approach will be from the franchise the rest of the way. Will it be similar to what we've seen the last couple of years, or will they honor the competition and allow these guys to continue to play based on the stretch they had going into the All-Star break, where they've won 10 of their last 14? And then what does he want to see from Donovan Clingan, who's going to play extended minutes as we continue to move forward with the injury to DeAndre Ayton? And Klingan's coming off his two best games, 21.7 rebounds, career high in points, and then follow that up with another game against Denver, 17 points and 20 boards. 10 of those on the offensive glass. He was an animal. So that's the show today. Coming up next, we'll talk Portland Golf Show and then Ben Golliver at 4:20. And it's great to talk with you. I appreciate your time. Brenden Slaughter's here. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, just had a Blazer fan reach out to me. I won't reveal his name because I don't want to create any marital strife. He just said, Chad, I understand if you can't get me tickets to the Laker game, but can you please tell Jessica Alba to return my DMs? Thank you very much. I'll have her return yours once she gets back to me, my friend. 43 years old, and apparently her marriage of 17 years is on the rocks. It's very sad. And she still looks pretty spectacular, I might add. All right, the Portland Golf Show presented by Michelob Ultra is coming to Portland February 28th through March 2nd at the Expo Center. It's always one of the best shows each and every year. It's the West Coast's biggest indoor golf experience. You can get great front door offers, including bonus golf to Mount Hood Resort, Strix on golf balls, and free kids golf from the first tee while it lasts. Details are online. It's presented by the Oregonian. It's the Portland Golf Show, and joining us now to discuss is Dick Stevens. Dick, welcome back to the Rip City Drive. It's great to have you on. I can't wait for the golf show. I was just explaining before I brought you on about the technology and the way it helps us with our game now. I was in practicing on the simulators last night over at Golf Tech, and I can pull up literally any golf course in the world and practice specific shots at different courses that I play, which I think is awesome. And those are the type of things that people have access to now that wasn't it wasn't that way 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh, it's like living in 2001: A Space Odyssey for the sport of golf. Now every day, it's never going back to. There is no old school anymore. It's new school for golf.
Yeah, it's the best. And what I love about the golf show is that it gives me a chance to walk around and see some of the different technology, the different clubs, and all the different things that are out there now to help you with your game. And you guys provide all of that at the Portland Expo Center.
We do. It's such a great event. I appreciate you guys having us on. It's always a great time to be with Rip City. I always feel like we're pulling the rubber band back to get the excitement going for all of Portlandia. This show for us is very special because of all the shows we do. We're currently on a 5-show national tour. We're in Kansas City this week, but we're Northwesterners. We're from Seattle. We're from Portland. This is our hometown show. And this is our 31st year, which we're really proud of to say that. You know, there's not a lot of consumer expos, whether it's a car show or the home show or the boat show. To be doing it for 31 years seamlessly, we're really blessed. That makes this a special showcasing for the attendees because it is the Portland's golfers show. That's the way we look at it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So I want to ask you this because it's so overwhelming when I walk into the Expo Center to check out the exhibits and talk to some of the different people who are there. So what is your best suggestion for how people should take in the golf show? Which tickets should they buy? What's the best way to do it? Because depending on which ticket you buy, you offer a lot of savings in terms of real dollars for golf.
We really do. I mean, the GA ticket is already just chock full. If you go to portlandgolfshow.com, you buy your ticket online. We're going to enter you immediately for some amazing golf products, some Bushnell golf stuff, some MGI carts. But what that does is allows you to go right in line because people that go to the Portland Golf Show know that there was always swag at the front door. We've got rounds of golf. We've got indoor golf credit, Strix on balls for the really good early birds. First 500 a day get a round of golf, a really great golf offer at Mount Hood Golf Resort Golf Course. And then the Players Tour Pass is like kind of our Charlie and the Chocolate Factory ticket, so to speak. There's only 250 of those allowed, and theirs just chock full with extra bonuses, extra offers. They get the Northwest Golfers Playbook in there, which has got $4,900 worth of value in it. That's a $59 ticket. And what's really great about the event, this is our 4th year now, is right next door to us is the Portland Seafood and Wine Festival. So if you buy a ticket to the golf show, you get to walk into the Seafood and Wine Festival on Saturday and Sunday too.
That's awesome. It's like a 2-for-1 deal. It's going to go Friday 11 to 5, Saturday 10 to 5, and Sunday 10 to 4. Active duty military, police, and firefighters just $16, which is terrific. Of all the things you see, because you're in this game year round,
yes.
What's the most impressive technology and or clubs or things that you've seen that you would encourage people to check out?
Well, what's neat about the show is all the brand new 2025 product, whether it's TaylorMade or Cleveland or Callaway or Strixon, any of the big brands. Red Tail Golf Center has an indoor 100-foot-long testing and fitting zone. And the equipment that you're hitting literally has been on the market for 2 weeks. This just came out It's so exciting. The PGA Show in Orlando was last month. This is a world debut. So the West Coast shows are some of the first shows that the consumers can not only test this equipment, but get fitted and buy it right through Redtail. We also have PXG, which is our official club that will be there with their indoor fitting cube. You actually walk into a real simulated studio and use all their technology, and they'll fit you for the equipment and take care of you right there at the show. You can actually go on PortlandGolfShow.com and register for a fitting at the event. You talked about, what's new, what's exciting. In my opinion, golf has never been a more equal game with equipment. It really comes down to shaft selection, which heads look good, grips, length, and getting these things fitted is no longer should be looked at as like a luxury or too expensive. The fitting is the new normal. If you go in and buy a pair of shoes, you don't buy 10.5s when you wear 11.5. Golf should be seen the same way. And for people that are just getting into the game or on a budget, we have incredible sale areas with Redtail, with Par West Golf. There are also some great used clubs that have been returned for folks that, trying to look for something else. So we've got something at every single level of the show. And that's just on the technological side.
Hey, can you give us some details? You mentioned PXG, who is your official, golf club partner. I think it was a gentleman, I think his name's Bob, who started up the company. But what makes PXG unique?
They really pride themselves on being is made in America. It's an American company. Bob Parsons had a vision for what he wanted a golf club company to look like, and he's executing it. When they came out, it was a different type of focus for PXG, very high end, very elite. They still offer that, but they promote their golf clubs. It's every person's club. So whether you're 17 years old, or if you're a female, or you're a senior, or you're a golfer that needs an X shaft and not a regular shaft, they get you dialed in. And honestly, all the brands do that now. PXG, we're really excited about having them involved, but when you look at the brands that Redtail's bringing in, that's where things lie right now. I myself, I'm 56. I'm not in the best shape. I finally got a driver fitting in the last 3 years. I'm hitting the ball 15 yards further, and I'm not swinging as hard as I used to. And this shaft technology is what's really getting people where to go. And when you mix a simulator and the data that comes from it, you don't have to be a scientist. Let the fitting guys do that for you. Just swing until it feels right, and they get you right where you need to go. And that's all happening at Portland Golf Show.
Dick, you bring up a good point. I've been fitted for clubs, and the first time I went through the process, I was blown away at how detailed it is to really find the exact clubs for your body type and your swing. And I don't think a lot of people have gone through a club fitting, process. But can you speak more to that, about the importance of that, especially since you can get it done at the Portland Golf Show, about going through that entire process to get something fit for your body?
Yeah, basically what they do is you warm up, and they'll give you a club to select. Maybe sometimes they'll start with a 7-iron or a 5-iron, move you into a driver, depending what you're looking to do. And as soon as the fitter feels like, okay, this person's warmed up, they're probably hitting it about where they should with the equipment that they've been handed. Sometimes they'll push you a little bit, and then they'll reel you back in. But what they're trying to do is find out spin rates, launch angle, your swing speed, no matter who you are. And they're trying to maximize what you're able to bring to the interface with the ball, and then trying to trampoline as much energy off that inertia. That's what fitting is all about. And there are some folks who are coming in there that only swing, 80, 85 miles an hour, who are now putting the ball up there 15 yards further because the shaft is getting it done. And there are some really cool brands like Zexio, which is spelled XXIO. People are seeing us on TV a lot more. They're really embracing that for the senior and female golfer. It's an exciting brand. And then the same thing goes with putter fittings and wedge fittings. It's incredible. And for folks who are on a fixed budget, when they're looking at used equipment, trying out different shafts of stuff that's already been fixed and fitted is the absolute way to go. And we really embraced it. This year we have 4 simulators at the show. Not just in the Michelob Ultra 19th hole and PXG, but we have Launch House. We have 3 different closest to the pin competitions on the floor. One's called the Ace, one's called the Tradition, and one's called the Stadium Shot. Total blast.
We're talking with Dick Stevens from the Portland Golf Show. Will you have someone on site that can re-grip some clubs? I've got a couple of clubs that need to be re-gripped.
I don't know. Well, I don't think they have a regripping group, but if you bring them there, Red Tail does regrip golf clubs, so they could probably take them and then have them ready back out there and tigered for you. From an interactive standpoint, this is one of our best shows. We've got the Landfear Automotive Portland Putting Championship. We have a 50-foot putting green. We'll see maybe 2,000 people will try that. We're using the PXG putters there, using the Srixon balls there. That's going to be a blast. We've got the short game shot that is always a big hit. And kids under 12, and I got to say something really important about our Women's Day programming. All the kids under 12 are free. They go to the children's course with first tee. As long as the supplies last, they're going to give them a round of golf. This is our third year with Women's Day on Saturday. And we're very, very focused on trying to embrace the biggest boom in the sport. Our female golfers happened through the pandemic. And the standard Portland Classic LPGA Tour event is really wrapped their arms around it. We're going to have seminars, lessons, competitions for women on Saturday from 11 to 2. So ladies, come on out. We have a $10 ticket at the door, great swag, and some really cool new women's product companies that are going to be there.
All right, Portland Golf Show going to be February 28th through March 2nd. You can check out the website, portlandgolfshow.com. So, Dick, final say from you, where's the best place for people to get tickets and to be able to take part in the golf show and the Portland Seafood and Wine Festival?
Oh, man, the best way is just go to portlandgolfshow.com as soon as you can and buy your ticket online. It gets downloaded to your phone. If you buy the Players Tour Pass, it comes with a bonus ticket to bring your friend with you. And you'll get all the great swag as the Players Tour Pass. It's all spelled out on the home page. The box office will be open, so we do take walk-up traffic. But online, why not make it easy? The lines on Friday and Saturday sometimes get a little long. There could be, 500, 600 people waiting to get in. We're really good about getting everybody in there in 15 or 20 minutes tops. And just spend the day with us. We've got tons of liquid lounges with Jim Beam and Delicato Wines and Michelob Ultra and Fourth West Whiskey and Timberline. Man, it's going to be a hoot. So just chill out and enjoy the afternoon. Get your hand stamped. Come back again the next day if you want.
All right, Portland Golf Show, February 28th through March 2nd at the Portland Expo Center. You can check them out online at portlandgolfshow.com and purchase your tickets online. It's Dick Stevens with us here on the Rip City Drive. Dick, as always, I appreciate the time. Good luck with your travels and can't wait for you to get here.
Well, thanks so much. You guys are awesome. Hope to see you out there. Let me know. I'd love to host you guys at the show.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
All right, there you go. Portland Golf Show, February 28th through March 2nd. What I love about the golf show is it always hits in the time of the year where can you smell that? Like I can almost smell the course in the morning with the sun popping up and the fresh grass. I can't wait to get out there. Blazer season ends soon enough, and the golf season will begin right after that. And then I get like 6 months of uninterrupted golf activity. Now I just need a little cooperation from the weather to make sure the rain doesn't destroy me in April and May. And then it's on. But I would recommend to go out to the golf show if you're just getting into the game. And I've talked to a lot of people who have just gotten into the game or got into the game during the COVID time, and they're loving it. They're playing, they're developing, they're getting better, they're enjoying it. Some are getting some new clubs, and I love talking to people that do that. It's exciting. So go out and check it out. The great thing is if you get fitted at Red Tail, I got fitted at Golf Tech, what they do is, this is the beauty of it, they're not trying to sell you a specific club. The way it went for me is that, Nick just had me hit everything, literally, that he had access to. Hit different irons, hit different woods, try a bunch of different, clubs on hand. And then you look at the data and which clubs are giving you the best results. And then also what feels the best, what looks the best to your eye. And then from that, you're able to come up with the right combination. So it wasn't a case where someone was trying to sell me a particular brand. It was just, hey, based on the numbers, I would recommend this. And then, of course, we got to factor in how it looks and feels to you. That was fun. Getting fitted for your own clubs is pretty sweet because then you've got the right club in your hand that fits your body type, your swing, the whole shebang. And the technology is pretty sweet. And it's a great time to stock up on gear, too, at the Portland Golf Show, like shoes, as he mentioned. I've got a brand new pair of golf shoes, Echo. Thanks to my buddy Alex waiting for me to begin the new year. I like to get stocked up on all the supplies ahead of time, like gloves, tees, all the little things that you can think of that you need to get in your bag. And then when the season hits, you're ready to roll. That's what it comes down to. All right, so Portland Golf Show, big thanks to Dick Stevens. You can check out the Portland Golf Show online at portlandgolfshow.com. And it's going to be down there at the Portland Expo Center, February 28th through March 2nd. The Expo Center is huge, too. You walk in, you're like, does this building ever end? All right. So the rest of the show, Ben Golliver, Washington Post, will join me coming up at 4:20. We'll focus in on the NBA with him. And then Michael Holton in studio at 5:20. He was at the All-Star game. I want to get his take on what he saw and what he thought about the format. And we'll get his take on the second half of the Trailblazers season. If you want to jump on board, you can reach out. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Right? You can also hit me up on social media at Chad and Rip City. And it's pretty awesome. I was checking the forecast. You know, we had that freezing weather last week. I was looking at the extended forecast through the month of February. And it's like all we have is warmer temperatures. I think we made it through the rough patch of weather, and I think we're good to go. Temperatures are going to be anywhere from the 50s into the 60s between now and the end of February. And temperatures in the 60s, mid to low 50s at the beginning of March. What that means is that I don't think we're going to get hit with any more snow. That's a very good thing. We don't need late snow. We don't need more icy roads. We don't need any more shutdowns. We don't need any more of the mess. So there you have it. That's the latest. So it's looking very good. And I feel great right now. As I've told you before, the best of what I have to offer is on Wednesdays right around this time. Had a very productive morning, got my workout in, and I feel amazing right now. Luke, my workout partner of 30-plus years, is preparing for another competition. He's in a Spartan race, and he does a variety of them. He's got another one coming up in Vegas in March, and we are training, and he's focusing on that. But what we did is we made a little accountability sheet. So I wanted to tighten some things up nutrition-wise, as was he. And so we sat down 2 weeks ago, and we put together nutrition plans for each of us for the next 3 months. And then we sign it, and we commit to doing it, and no deviation. And so I was looking to drop, roughly 5 pounds, and I wanted to tighten some things up with my macronutrients, and my supplementation is there. And so it's nice to be locked in and focused. And now there's 27 games left in the Trailblazer season. The weird part about my schedule is that I love covering sports and going to all the games. It's great, but it takes up a lot of my time. So, from the start of basketball season in October all the way through the month of March, the beginning of April, my days are pretty much eaten up because the basketball games come fast and furious. They're constant. So you end up working 6-7 days a week. But when the basketball season's over and there are fewer games to cover, then I have more of a normal schedule. And that allows for being able to pursue the golf addiction. Now, I probably would have been better falling into cocaine or something because it might be cheaper. But golf is great. I absolutely love it. I can't get enough of it. And it's great to have guys you play with. We got a lot of great courses. We're very fortunate here in the Northwest to have access to such great local golf courses. I mean, a ton of them. All across town. There's great courses everywhere. So I just feel like we are fortunate to have access to all of that here. And I think all of you golfers out there understand it. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Ben Golliver at 4:20. Mike Holton in studio at 5:20. And you can hit me up if you so desire, 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, the college football commissioners got together in New Orleans, and Heather Dinich has got a report out. She says, following a joint meeting between athletic directors representing their respective conferences Wednesday, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said they agreed that the way teams are seeded in the 12-team college football playoff should change this fall. She went on to say that while the voices of the two wealthiest and most powerful conferences certainly carry weight, any changes for the 2025 season have to be unanimously agreed upon by the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua. Sankey said, quote, I'm prepared to vote for seating change, but it has to be unanimous. Dinich went on to say this past season, the four highest-ranked conference champions earned the top four seeds in a first-round bye. It was one of the most controversial facets of the format because it allowed for the ninth-ranked Boise State, which won the Mountain West Conference, to earn the number 3 seed, and the 12th-ranked Arizona State Sun Devils to earn the number 4. Third-ranked Texas and fourth-ranked Penn State were runners-up in their respective conferences, but they couldn't be seeded higher than number 5 and 6 because the top four seeds were reserved for the conference champs. She went on to say that a popular suggestion to change the seeding for this fall, which Petitti said he favored, has been to use the selection committee's rankings for the seeding while making room for the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. In that model, the committee's top 4 teams would earn the top 4 seeds and earn first-round byes, regardless of whether they were conference champions. That would also open the door for Notre Dame, which can't win a conference title as an independent, to earn a first-round bye as a top 4 seed. Petitti said, quote, we're in favor of going to a straight seeding where there's no difference between rankings and seeding like we had this year. We're in support of that for next year. Yeah, we'll see how things shake out. My guess would be they're not going to be able to get a unanimous decision this year, and so we'll probably have one more season with the rankings being what they were. And I got to be honest with you, while I agree that it needs change, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The college football playoff, look, I'm not someone to complain. When I'm given greatness, I'm not going to nitpick at how it could be a little bit better. I was surprised at how many people were whining and complaining about this and that, and how some of the games were blowouts and the matchups and the seeding. It's like, dude, shake yourself. Do you understand? You got, maybe it's just from the generation I come from. I grew up in a day and age where I had buffoons running college football trying to convince me that we didn't need to have a playoff, that it was fine having the writers and the coaches vote for who they thought was number one. And then because of the bowl alliances, we couldn't get real championship matchups because some teams couldn't play in certain bowls because of the bowl alliances. That was a horrific setup. We had split national championships. That's not cool. And then after that, they gave us the BCS, which was an improvement, but it had its flaws as well. At least it gave us a true national championship game, but the system for which they determined the top 2 teams was controversial because it was heavily weighted on computers. Well, then we finally moved to a 4-team playoff, and that was a major step in the right direction. And then we eventually got to where we're at now with 12 teams. So I come from a day and age where we didn't used to have legitimate national championship matchups because of the bowl alliances. And we had the writers and the coaches voting on who they thought were number one. When you know darn well the writers and the coaches don't watch all the games, they too have built-in biases. And it was unfortunate. I'll never forget 91, and I'll never forgive college football for not giving us Washington against Miami. That was a joke. Instead, we got Washington, Michigan, and Miami taking on Nebraska. Miami and Washington both dominated their games, but we never got a true national championship game, and therefore we don't really know who won the national championship. And that's horrific. I don't like it. So I'm glad we're at where we're at now. So I'm not going to complain and nitpick at having a 12-team playoff. All I know is that I sat down and watched the playoff games, and even though some of them were blowouts, it was freaking awesome. So eventually what I would do for my solution is, number one, I would make every game except for the title game on campus sites because that would be terrific. We saw what it looked like on campus. It was great. We need more of that. So make every playoff game on campus aside from the national championship game, which you can have in a rotating spot. Or if you want to do it the Rose Bowl, I think the Rose Bowl gets a little bit too much love. I don't understand why you can't rotate it, but if they want to just make it the Rose Bowl for the championship game, then whatever. That's fine. I've been to the Rose Bowl. I like the sunset, but the stadium is outdated and overrated, okay? And getting there is a pain in the ass because of the traffic in the area. The Rose Bowl is nice, and it's got a lot of tradition, but let's not act like that's a destination spot. You can rotate the Rose Bowl in with all these other spots, Arizona, Georgia, all the good spots where you can have title games. There's a lot of good host cities that can do a good job of putting on an event. And then I would eventually get to 16 when they expand. I wouldn't go to 14. I'd go to 16. And then what I would do, along with having campus site games except for the title game, is I would have the final rankings 1 through 16 be your 1 through 16. And that's how I would do it. And I would slot the teams accordingly. That's my solution if you want my true take. But I'm not going to complain about the way it's set up right now. Who cares? Yeah, Ohio State, they got in. They didn't win their conference. But look at where they ended up. They were the best team. They won the championship. It all worked out in the end. And it was great seeing all those different teams play. And Arizona State got to the playoff. Had a chance to watch the Sun Devils. That was awesome. So there you have it. I like where it's at, but I don't think they're going to make changes for next year because I don't think they can get a unanimous vote. And you got to keep in mind the reason why they got to this point, they were able to get an expansion to 12 teams, but the way it's always been explained to me is, you know, as much like we see in Congress where you got a big bill, you're trying to get approved, and you got to get people to jump on board, so it requires concessions. And part of the key in getting this advancement to a 12-team playoff was you had all these conferences that didn't want to lose the value in the championship games. And therefore, they came up with the solution to have the championship games and to make the champion, the top 4 champions get buys. And that's how they set it up because they wanted to maintain value in the conference title games. The reason why is because those games are worth a lot of money to the different conferences. So we'll have one more year. I think it'll be just like last year. And then after that, they'll move and continue to reconstruct. And then I think we'll see a vote to get an expansion to probably 16 teams in the very near future. There's too much money to be made. Too much money to be made. And the great thing is about going from 12 to 16 is it only makes it even better. Remember what the playoff produced this year? And it turned out to be great. We had meaningful games every single week of the season, all the way up to the conference championship weekend. We had more fan bases with more hope and interest across the country because you had teams vying for playoff spots that normally would have never had a chance to get into the playoff. And it created some excitement. And the good news now is you don't have to be perfect or undefeated to get into the playoff. Look at Ohio State. They had a horrendous loss to Michigan at the end of the season. But because they did a good enough job through the regular season, they still made the playoff and ended up winning a national championship. In the past, had they lost that game to Michigan, they're likely not winning the national title game, nor would they have a chance to do it. But now with the setup, you don't have to be perfect, which I think is great. So I think we'll get one more year as is. After that, they'll make changes to the seeding process, and we'll get an expansion to probably 16 teams in the very near future. And it's going to continue to be great. But the best benefit that I did not see coming was how it enhanced the regular season, did not hurt it. The only negative or adverse impact might be that you have a game like Michigan and Ohio State that maybe doesn't have quite the meaning that it once did. It still means a lot to the fan bases involved, but it now means that you can get into that game, lose that game, and still have a chance to win a national title like we saw this year with Ohio State. But outside of that, there were more games that mattered across the country and more fans with hope because their teams had a chance to get into the playoff. So there you have it. That's how I would do it. 16 teams ranked 1 through 16 according to the committee, hand out the buys accordingly, and have every game be played on a campus site except for the championship game that you can rotate between Pasadena, Arizona, Georgia, and wherever. I don't make millions of dollars to be a commissioner. I just did one on the show. It's a pretty good solution right there. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Ben Golliver coming up at 4:20. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing.
From the Goldberg-Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg-Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 4 o'clock chat here. What's up, my friends? Trailblazers in action tomorrow night. The Lakers are in town with Luka and LeBron. Tip-off from Moda at 7. Chris Burkhardt will have game day live at 5 from Moda Center here on 620 Rip City Radio. According to reports, Luka Doncic expected to be off a minutes restriction when action resumes. There is one game tonight. The Lakers will host the Hornets at Crypto.com Arena. That was a makeup game from the Fires in Southern California. Portland's got 27 games remaining on the season, and all Trailblazer games streamed live on the iHeartRadio app. We'll talk with Michael Holton. Holton on Hoops in studio at 5:20. Ben Golliver joins the show in 20 minutes. Kellen Moore is now in New Orleans, so the Eagles need an offensive coordinator. They've promoted Kevin Patullo, and the NFL salary cap expected to increase by $22 million when the new league year hits in 2025. And Greg Sankey says he would vote for change to the seeding of the college football playoff, but it has to be unanimous.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, Ben Golliver is coming up in 20 minutes. I may need your help on a discussion I got into. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I want to bring in Brenden Slaughter, who covers college football and follows the Oregon State Beavers with Beavers Edge. And Brenden, I'll ask you, what changes would you like to see to the college football playoff? I want an expansion to 16 teams. I want the teams seeded according to the final rankings from the committee, 1 through 16. And then I want campus site games for all games except for the playoff or the championship game. And they can rotate at different venues. What would you like to see with changes to the playoff?
Yeah, first and foremost, you took one from me there. I'd love to see more games on campus. I think that was a really cool thing. I think there's still ways for those, TV partners like Chad to monetize those games. Like, I get it. They want those games to go be at Jerry's World or go be at the Superdome or go be at, somewhere else where you can smack a lot more people in. But I think there was something special about those on-campus games. And I think back to, this last year, for example, what if instead of meeting up in, I think it was Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl, Boise State got to host Penn State on the Blue? Yeah. Right? So, I don't know. Maybe not, but that's something I think would be cool.
Well, maybe not. That's the way it should be.
No, and
it would have been great to see that. Or Texas down at Tempe at Sun Devil Stadium.
Oh, you would have been there, Chad. You would have been there, my man. But
true.
No, that would be cool. Expansion, I don't know if I have a set number. 16 seems like it'd be a good little jump up. Is there a good number? Maybe not. I definitely like to see it continue to be expanded and they can make, like you just mentioned, concessions. Say you do something for a couple years, it's not the format you like, you can always go back and change it. That's the beautiful thing about this college football playoff. There should be room for flexibility based on what the ratings are, what the fan response is, what the response from the players and coaches are, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say my two biggest priorities are more on-site games and expand a little bit further. And I'll throw in, give more than just one guaranteed nod to the highest rated group of 5 teams. Give my Beavs some love.
Well, the good thing is maybe what they'll do, we'll see how things work out with the negotiations once they expand. There's definitely going to be more guaranteed spots for the big conferences, SEC and Big Ten. But I think we'll see more guarantees for the conferences, but then I think we might see more guarantees for group of 5 possibly. But the good thing is that if you just do it 1 through 16 and those are your 16 playoff teams, then there's going to be years where, teams like Oregon State could be up there. It could be a year where the Big 12 gets 3 or 4 teams in. You could have a year where the SEC gets 6 teams in. It would vary year to year, but I think 1 through 16, if you just take the final rankings and do it that way, I don't think too many people would have complaints about that. You know what I'm saying?
No, totally. And I think the other thing is the more you expand, Chad, so what happens to bowl games as we currently know them? I remember discussing this when it first came out, and it's like, do you turn bowl games into those, it's no longer the second round playoff game, it's the Gator Bowl kind of a thing? Because there are, some will probably fade away, but there are some bowl games that have been around for a long time.
I don't think the bowl games are going anywhere. Even when they expand the playoff, the bowl games, the reason why I've learned this from going to a lot of bowl games over the last couple of years, a lot of people think they don't matter, but when I go to the bowl games and I see the teams compete and I see the winning team, it still matters to them. I was down at the Oregon State Vegas Bowl like you were.
Yeah.
No one seemed to care about that game, but the Oregon State Beavers sure did, and they got a lot out of it, and that was a big trip for them. I was at the Oregon State Notre Dame Sun Bowl. Notre Dame didn't seem to not enjoy their experience of winning that game and being there with their fans and the people who support. And there's just too much money to be made by the people that run the bowls to where there's still going to be interest. And ESPN needs a lot of filler for that, space on their airwaves. And bowl games are a great way to fill that, and they can, get sponsors on board and be able to push it that way. It's, it's a made-for-TV product. There may be people who don't show up to certain bowl games, but it's still great viewing, and I enjoy the bowl games.
I've been to a couple, and I've been to one where Oregon State was crushed and one where they won. So it's and to that point, each one of them were still a fun time, and most times a cool stadium, cool venue to go to. You and I were talking about how cool it is to go check out different venues yesterday. So I think that's part of the experience for the fan, no different than planning for an away game, right?
Yeah, heck, Notre Dame and Oregon State was sold out in the Sun Bowl, for crying out loud.
And that's a big stadium.
I benefited greatly from Notre Dame fan being so anxious to get down there to El Paso. Thank you, my friends. I'd like to thank my Catholic friends for supplying me with enough money to be able to pay for my entire trip. Thank you.
Touchdown Jesus, man. They got deep pockets up there.
They do. So I don't think the bowl games are going anywhere, but yeah, I think expansion's right around the corner. But I would do it 1 through 16, and then each year you'll have a different combination of teams from different conferences, and we'll see how it shakes out. But that'll be fun. Either way, it's going to be great. I guess what I'm trying to say is that don't complain about a 12-team playoff based on where we've come from. It's not perfect yet, but we're moving in the right direction. 12 teams is a lot better than 4, and a playoff is much better than no playoff. Again, we used to have the writers and the coaches vote on who they thought was number 1. And then because of bowl alliances like the Big Ten and the Pac-10, you couldn't have certain teams match up in bowl games. It was dumb.
Right.
I like true national championship games. I thought this year was great. Some of the games weren't terrific, but I found it to be quite compelling. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to more this year. Now, there was a post that was put out, and I wasn't even trying to create controversy when I made the statement on social, but I'll ask you this. This site called Hoops put out a simple statement saying that Dirk Nowitzki was the best shooting big man of all time. And I just simply responded and said I'd probably have to give Larry Bird the nod on that one. And then, of course, people fired back and said, Chad, Bird is not a big. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. So he was 6'9". He played forward. He was typically a small forward, but based on the offense and the matchup, he did a lot of work in the paint. I would consider him a big. And Dirk Nowitzki, while he was traditionally set as a power forward, he played a lot on the perimeter. I see them both as the same type of guy, but I'm getting a lot of flack just by saying that I thought Larry Bird was the best shooting big man of all time. But apparently, based on definition, I must be off because people are saying, Chad, Larry Bird was not a big. Well, he was 6'9", Dirk was 7. 6'9", 7 feet tall. One was traditionally a small forward, one was traditionally a power forward. I would consider both those guys bigs. But people are telling me that Bird was more of a wing player. I think both those guys are perfect examples of what we're seeing a lot in the NBA today, where you have positionless basketball. So you have guys who, can play any type of spot on the floor. Bird could bring the ball up just like Dirk. He could run the offense from the top and be able to set up his teammates. He could battle down low and post up. He could play any type of position. And he could step back and shoot the three, just like Dirk. Dirk could play on the block and post up. He could bang down low, but he also had the ability to handle the rock out on top and be able to shoot from distance. I see them both as a very similar type player. Like Nikola Jokic. He's one of the best shooting big men of all time, too. He's got the body of a traditional center, but he handles the rock like a guard. He runs pick and roll like a guard. He can play on the perimeter. He can set up his teammates. He can facilitate the offense. But if he needs to, he can go down and back down to the basket and be able to turn and score down low. He can play multiple positions. I don't know. It's just, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I would give the nod to Bird. But Dirk Nowitzki was terrific. That's why it was so shocking that Patrick Dumont at that press conference he had after the Luka trade, he didn't even reference Luka when he was mentioning some of the all-time greats. It's like, dude, you had Dirk Nowitzki. You didn't reference Dirk when he was one of the all-time greatest players ever. And he played for your franchise. And he was exactly what you're looking for in a Maverick. Long-term, 20-plus years, and gave his heart and soul to the franchise and won a championship. You should probably reference him when you're talking about, past greats. But then again, you probably don't care too much about the greats who have played for your franchise because you traded Luka away. So there you go. So if I'm picking a best shooting big of all time, I'm going to go Larry Bird. I think Dirk Nowitzki is right there. And with the way the game is going now, we're getting many more guys like that. Nikola Jokic is one of those guys. I can't believe the consistency in which he can stroke it from downtown and run the pick and roll out on top. A lot of these bigs, they're just different than what we had when I was younger. Anthony Davis is another guy who can step back and shoot a three, handle the rock, and attack the rim. He can play with his back to the basket. Like Anthony Davis, we give a lot of flack to Dallas for making the deal for him. But Anthony Davis is he's a terrific player. I love watching him play because I'm not used to seeing guys of that size be able to handle the rock the way that he can. And Victor Wembanyama, what is he? Is he a big? Is he a wing player? I don't even know if you can put a definition on him. He can attack the rim. He can play down low. He's well over 7 feet, but he spends most of his time on the perimeter. What is he? Would you consider him a big or a wing? I have no idea. It's too confusing for me. When I was younger, a point guard was a point guard, a power forward was a power forward, a center was a center. But now it's just different because you have guys who can, at different sizes, who can play all over the place, which is really nice. And I enjoy it. And that's why tomorrow night's going to be a lot of fun because Luka and LeBron together on the floor. I don't really know what to expect, but I hope LeBron plays and he doesn't have to play too much tonight against Charlotte because I want to see what it looks like on the floor together. The Lakers will have problems with rebounding and they lack rim protection, but in a 7-game playoff series, they're going to be an offensive juggernaut. And coming up with a game plan to deal with both Luka and LeBron is going to be tough. I want to see how teams deal with that. But the two best teams right now in the West appear to be Oklahoma City and Denver. Now, Denver, I don't know if they got enough defensively, but lately they've been playing special basketball, especially on offense with Jokic leading the way they move the ball, they trust each other, and then the anticipatory passing and the way he runs the offense, Jokic, is fascinating to me. If you watch him, it took me a while to get around to loving Jokic, but when I watch him now, I just see his anticipation, his understanding of the game. He's out there playing chess because he understands what's going to happen before it happens. And that allows him to set his teammates up in a great position. He can outthink you. He can outplay you. And for a guy of his size and his body structure, he's got incredible endurance. He can play long minutes and be out there and be productive. He's in great condition. He doesn't look it per se, but he's in great condition. Yeah, he's an impressive guy. Just like LeBron, the biggest thing I marvel at with LeBron is his conditioning and how he continues to play at such a high level this deep in his career at 40+. It's wild to me. All right, when we come back, Ben Golliver, Washington Post, will join us. We'll get his take on Luka and LeBron. He's going to see him tonight down at Crypto.com Arena taking on the Hornets. I'll ask him about the young forwards for the Blazers, Avdia and Kamara. And where does he think Kevin Durant's going to end up next year? Because it won't be in Phoenix. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, Rip City Drive, what a pleasure it is and a perfect time to speak with him from the Washington Post. He covers the NBA. It's Ben Golliver who is back. And Ben, have you been able to find any logic to what the Mavericks were doing when they traded Luka to the Lakers for AD and a first-round pick?
I still don't understand the decision. I don't understand what they were looking for in terms of the return package. I don't get the timing. I don't get the secrecy in terms of not really like opening up the trade talks, trying to get a bidding war going. I don't get the messaging after the trade in terms of trying to explain it and really, I think, angering the fan base down there in Dallas, just making things worse in terms of how they handled the aftermath of the deal. It's all incredibly confusing, but I think it is important to point out nothing is guaranteed in the NBA. You know, Luka's as blue chip as it gets in terms of being a 25-year-old superstar coming to Los Angeles in his prime, but he's going to have big expectations here being on the Lakers. The playoffs are right around the corner. The fans are going to expect everything to just be instant chemistry. They're going to expect, a deep playoff run, maybe not a championship, but they're going to want to see some instant returns. And Luka's been working back from some injury issues, so he's going to have to do that on a tight timeline as well. And so I think that's the exciting part of this trade. Even though it feels like the Lakers fleeced the Mavericks, the story hasn't been written yet. You know, it's still up to be discussed here, starting with these next couple months in terms of the playoff push. So I think it rejuvenates everything here in Los Angeles. It gets everybody back invested in this NBA season. It sets the narratives going into the postseason. But nothing's guaranteed. They haven't won anything yet. I think that's what's so fun about it.
Well, in the short term, it would appear that the Lakers will have issues with rebounding and a lack of rim protection, but very dynamic on offense. How do you think this group could come together when the playoffs hit?
Well, it's so interesting, Chad, because the Lakers, one of their key strengths was perimeter playmakers with LeBron James and Austin Reeves. And so they trade that size you're talking about in Anthony Davis to triple down on perimeter playmaking. You look at the Mavericks, it's the same thing. One of their biggest strengths actually was rim protection before the trade. Guys like Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively have done a great job protecting the rim down there in Dallas, and they tripled down on rim protection, bringing in Anthony Davis as the new starting center, kind of big man, power forward, hybrid, whatever you want to call him. So both these teams decided what they wanted their identities to be, and then just kind of went even further in that direction. I think for the Lakers, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be showtime. In the first game that we saw with LeBron James and Luka together, they hit that full court pass from Luka to LeBron for the run out layup. You saw a little bit of turnaround jumper action from Luka and LeBron. It felt like a very natural pairing, two guys who kind of see the sport the same way and are able to make each other better. So I think the offense is really going to be what they hang their hat on. They're going to try to outscore teams. They're going to want to control the tempo. They're probably going to play a little bit faster than LeBron teams typically do, and that's going to be their formula. As we know, going into the playoffs, typically the best balanced teams are the teams that go the furthest. If you look right now in this Western Conference especially, the teams I think that are more balanced than the Lakers would be like the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets. If the Lakers were to face either one of those teams in the playoffs right now, I think that they would lose. So they're going to have to really show that they can play high-energy defense. They can get by doing small ball with LeBron James at center on the defensive end. And it's going to have to be team rebounding, gang rebounding. Everybody's going to have to get in to kind of cover up for that lack of Anthony Davis inside. Of course, the trade for Mark Williams, who was going to fill that gap, fell apart for the Lakers. They don't really have other good options. They signed Alex Len off the scrap heap, but he's not really going to be giving you much anymore these days. So the Lakers are going to have a thin margin for error on the defensive end, but still it's going to be an incredibly entertaining team to watch once they're all healthy.
All right, one final question on the trade. You mentioned some of the things that popped up after it went down. What was the most surprising part to you? Was it Nico Harrison and his comments? Was it the secrecy, the bizarre press conference of Patrick Dumont of the Mavericks, or the fact that Clutch, LeBron, and AD said they had no idea the trade went down? What was the most interesting piece of all that for you?
Well, it feels a little bit like everybody got their story straight, in terms of in terms of who knew what when. It's like, oh, we're all completely blindsided. It's like, all right, you kind of sometimes have to take some of those things with a grain of salt. But the surprising part to me was Dallas's miscalculation in terms of Luka's popularity. And it can happen sometimes around, this goes back 50, 60, 70 years in the NBA, where the people who actually spend the most time around the superstars are the ones who have the hardest time, dealing with them. Like, for example, Wilt Chamberlain, does he care enough about the sport? Is he partying too much? Michael Jordan? Is he too hard on his teammates? Luka Doncic, is he staying in shape? Is he working hard enough to kind of get himself on the court? The more time you spend around those major figures, I think it can have kind of a warping effect, right? And you kind of forget to step back, and it's like, oh, yeah, this was the guy who carried the organization to the finals last year. This was the guy who absolutely destroyed the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals with multiple game-winning shots. You just kind of forget about their greatness because you're dealing with them on the day-to-day basis, and sometimes those guys can be difficult to deal with in their own ways. I think that really skewed things for the Mavericks. They were not able to just put out an olive branch to the fan base. They were not able to understand how hurt and burned those fans were going to feel by this decision to just blindside trade Luka overnight to a team that's one of their huge rivals. I mean, I remember back in the day when Mark Cuban used to try to say the Lakers should amnesty Kobe Bryant because he's trying to stoke that rivalry and try to get people upset on the other side of it, right? And here you just have what really I think Mavericks fans feel is like a betrayal. And in the press conferences afterwards, not only are there not clear explanations for why they traded Luka, but there's not even like, hey, we feel your pain. We know you're upset. We totally get it. We're sorry. We had to do what was best for everybody. Please trust us in the long term. There really just was not a very good framing from the Dallas side, and I think that's the most surprising part about it. It's like, imagine if the Warriors had traded Curry before he won his first championship, right? Imagine if the Cavaliers had traded LeBron before he had won his first championship, right? Like, it would have just angered the fan bases almost as much as they were angry when some of those guys left in free agency. So I think that they just needed to be much more self-aware in terms of what his standing was with that fan base and with that city. And unfortunately, they just missed the mark, and they're never going to be able to undo that. You know, there's going to be lingering scars for years and years. I've heard from Mavericks fans and Mavericks media members say it doesn't even matter if they win a championship at this point. It's not going to make things right with the fan base. The fan base is always going to feel bad about how this trade went down, and that's a tough spot to be in. That's a self-inflicted wound. You shot yourself in the foot. You can't blame anybody else.
We're talking with Ben Golliver, Washington Post. I agree with your assessment. Oklahoma City and Denver, the Nuggets have won 8 straight. Those two appear to be the best teams in the West right now. But what do you think about these young and up-and-comers in Memphis and Houston? The Grizzlies are getting it done with 2 rookies in the starting lineup, and the Rockets, of course, playing very good defense, very athletic with Ime Udoka. What are your thoughts on those two teams and what they might do come postseason time?
Look, I don't want to be the guy who dismisses them in terms of those being regular season teams, but I'm just going to say those are regular season teams. It takes a different type of formula to win in the playoffs, especially when I look at Houston. They have no pecking order offensively for late game situations, who's going to bring wins home. That's why they just kind of fall over themselves often in those situations. Now, they play incredibly hard on defense. They're very well coached. They're very focused. They're unselfish on the defensive end. But I don't think that team is going to be able to execute well enough offensively once they get to the playoffs to be able to get it done. That's going to be a team in the Houston Rockets that the other teams circle, and they say, man, I hope we get them in the first round. We could take care of them in the first round. That's not a team that scares us if Fred VanVleet or Jalen Green is going to have the ball in the biggest moments. I think that teams are going to say, hey, let's lick our chops. Let's hope we get the Houston Rockets. Now, Memphis is a very interesting team because they play the fastest in the league. Remember, this was the grit and grind Grizzlies, Chad, where they would slow you down, beat you up, Tony Allen, Zach Randolph. It's all elbows and, hard fouls and that kind of stuff. And now they get up and down the court. They almost play like a European style of basketball, frankly. Super, super fast. Jared Jackson's had a great season for them. And the most impressive part about it for the Grizzlies, they've done a lot of this without John Morant because he's been in and out of the lineups. But the thing is, for Memphis to take the next step in the playoffs, because they've been there before, they need the superstar closer. They need John Morant to be the face of this whole thing. They kind of need to have a different formula than what's been working in the regular season. So I have a little bit more faith in Memphis than I do Houston, that they're going to be able to get it done. But we saw them a couple years ago against the Lakers really not take care of business, come apart once they got into that postseason pressure. Once the game slows down, once they have to execute in half court, it really comes down to, can you trust John Morant? So he's got a lot to prove. I circle him as one of the biggest playoff X factors coming into the postseason because he's got the talent, he's got the ability to orchestrate. He's got some experience as well. He's been in some big games. He's got that kind of stuff under his belt. but he's going to have to show and prove that he can stay healthy, that he can do it consistently. We haven't barely heard from him in a couple of years. He wasn't even an all-star this year because of the injury issues. And so I think their whole season, to me, it hinges on John Morant's ability to come through in the clutch, even though all of their success has really been almost in spite of John Morant because they've done it with this collective effort during the regular season.
Hey, Ben, where do you think Kevin Durant's going to end up next year?
It's a great question. We have the same conversation every 2 years like clockwork, don't we, Chad? It's incredible. I mean, it's like anytime you get an odd year, 2021, 2023, 2025, it's like, all right, time to figure out where KD is going to go. It's a shame that that's the conversation, Chad, because I'll tell you this. I've been watching the Netflix series Court of Gold about the Paris Olympics, and I was over there covering that USA basketball team that won at the Avengers. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James. There are some beautiful scenes, interviews with Kevin Durant where he talks about how passionate he is about the sport. There's some beautiful moments where he comes through in the clutch and hits some big jumpers to help USA get that gold medal. This guy is just a lifelong hooper, and it just doesn't feel like he quite was able to reach his full potential in the NBA because he's bouncing around from team to team. He's always got a new coach. He's always got a new superstar sidekick. It's always something different. It doesn't feel like he found the constancy, the consistency that he was able to get with USA basketball, where he's the program's all-time leading scorer. He's the first guy in program history to win 4 gold medals. You could say he's the greatest winner in the history of USA basketball, right? You look at the NBA resume, 2 championships, amazing. 2 finals MVPs, amazing. And yet for a guy who's going to probably be an all-time top 10 or 15 player in NBA history, it still feels like something's been missing. And maybe that's what he's been chasing, Chad. Maybe that's why he's going to a new team every couple of years, because he quite hasn't found that fulfillment in the NBA that he's had with USA basketball. If I had to guess where he's playing next year, I maybe would circle those Dallas Mavericks, because they've got a couple of draft picks, right? They've got some salaries they could throw together. It would be tantalizing for KD to have a reunion with Kyrie Irving. It would be great to pair him with Anthony Davis, who could kind of cover up and handle some of the bigger load defensively. That would be a Nike trio as well. And we know Nico Harrison, the Mavericks GM, has got the Nike ties. You look at their roster, even their coaches, it's almost all Nike guys that he's collected and kind of put together over the years. If you're Phoenix, just hasn't worked out, you could understand why you'd want to hit the reset button. Maybe you get a couple of role players or starter caliber players back in the trade, you get some draft picks, and you try to retool things around Devin Booker. If I had to guess, that's where I would guess Kevin Durant would go, but it doesn't sound like a title formula to me with that big 3 in Dallas. It sounds better on paper than I think it would be in reality, and unfortunately that's been the case for a lot of Kevin Durant's teams. The Nets sounded great. The Suns sounded great, but the actual product wound up not being as good as we hoped.
All right, one final question for you. What are your impressions on the 2 forwards the Blazers have in Deni Avdija and Toumani Camara?
I think Kamara is their best player. I jokingly call him the franchise player on my podcast. It's overselling it a little bit, but in terms of everybody, how well they play, style of play, impact, effort level, this guy is giving the Blazers such better return on investment than DeAndre Ayton or Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simon. It's not even funny. Those guys have these gigantic contracts. They can't even get traded at the deadline because they're making so much money. They're not really impacting wins and losses in a major way. And you got this young guy, Kamara, who just plays his butt off so hard. And I think he's coming along offensively as well. But to me, he's their franchise player. And it's so weird to say because, who knows how many guys on that team make more money than him. He's making probably 10% what Ayton makes. But he's the guy I'm drafted first on that roster in terms of guys for this year. It's been incredible. Now, Avdija is a skilled player, a talented all-around guy. He's definitely a gamer. He's the kind of guy you want to have in your mix. So, it's no shot at him. But I've just been so impressed by what Kamara has done this year. And, Scoot's coming on a little bit, Chad. I've been seeing a little bit of progress from Scoot. And to me, if I'm the Blazers, that's got to be your top priority down the stretch of the season. I know they were winning games. It felt like they were tanking for the first couple of months, and then coming back around and winning games. And, are they screwing up the tank or whatever? Just let Scoot get a lot of minutes. Put him out there with Avdija and Kamara, the other high IQ players, right? Get him out there in a situation where he can try to drive some wins himself and get some more reps under his belt. I think that's the most important thing for the Blazers as they look towards the draft lottery and as they look towards the end of the season, because the wins and losses does not really matter. It's probably going to be a pivot summer. You're going to have to trade some of these older guys and get a little bit younger this summer. So prioritize Scoot, prioritize Kamara, make sure those guys get as many opportunities as they can down the stretch. And maybe, just maybe, you're finally going to be able to build a team with some identity, right? Because that's been the problem these last couple of years. Not enough heart, not a clear identity. Who's really working hard, and that's who you want to build around. And hopefully that's going to be Scoot. Hopefully that's Kamara as they look forward to their next chapter.
All right, Ben Golliver, Washington Post, here on the Rip City Drive. I appreciate the time. It's great to catch up with you. The only concern that Blazer fans have right now is that the Lakers are playing that game tonight against Charlotte for the makeup because of the wildfires. They're worried about load management tomorrow when they come to Portland. So fans want to see Luka and LeBron together.
Yeah, look, it's an issue. I mean, everybody was so upset at the All-Star game on Sunday because LeBron showed up like an hour before and was like, "Hey guys, guess what? I'm not playing."
I'm out.
Everyone was like, "What?" But I think the Lakers strategically rested LeBron for about a week in December, and it paid off with incredible play for him for the next month or so. I think they're trying to get another one of those breaks in for him right now. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, frankly, if he sits, against the Blazers. It wouldn't stun me because they're trying to stretch out this All-Star break as long as possible so he's got enough gas for that final home stretch, the last month and a half of the season. They want to make sure he's fresh because they got big hopes and big dreams for the playoffs.
All right, Ben. Keep killing it, my friend. I appreciate your time. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah, great to hear your voice, man. Take care.
Pretty encouraging to hear him talk about Scoot Henderson and how he's seeing progress in his game. And that's going to be one of the biggest players to watch down the stretch because I would agree. We're seeing progress with Scoot. We're seeing better decision-making, better shot-making, just a more comfort level that he's experiencing with his game on the floor. I've been very encouraged by that. And that's exciting because they need him to hit. They really need Scoot and Shaden to hit and become viable NBA starters for years to come. And if those two guys hit, even if they're not the alpha number one, mega star, that's okay. Because if they hit, it's going to make the rebuild and what they're trying to accomplish so much easier, which is important. But I love talking with Ben. Yeah, everyone, it's amazing. Everyone I've spoken with, who I respect and who, covers the game, is around the game, people who know people within the league, there's not one person that I've spoken with that thought, yeah, I can understand what the Mavericks are doing there. They're trying to, get more size and be more defensive and try to win a championship. No one thinks the trade's smart. No one. No one understands why the Mavericks did that. So either the Mavericks are smarter than everyone else, and that's hard to believe based on what I heard from Patrick Dumont. And then you got Nico Harrison, the guy that bombed Nike's presentation to Steph Curry. And you've got the Adelson Group, which is now the primary owners of the Mavs. Hard to believe that they figured something out that no one else has. Again, when you say that Shaq is known for his great work ethic and commitment, red flags are a-flying. I love Shaq as much as anyone. The guy's awesome. He was the big Aristotle, as he dubbed himself. But work ethic wasn't exactly his forte. You know what I'm saying? Which is why Kobe wanted to kill him. And by the way, Kobe, as great as he was, and I love the Mamba, he wasn't exactly a culture builder. He was an a-hole. But when you're that good and that dominant, you can be that. And you can threaten to punch teammates in the face like MJ. Oh, it's crazy. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Michael Holton in studio at 5:20. I appreciate your time. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. Big thanks to Ben Golliver, Washington Post. Yeah, it's never a bad idea to let Hall & Oates play a little bit longer. I think Daryl said this is one of those songs that came real quick for him. This is like one of those 15-minute jobbers where they sit down and crush out a smash single, and the lyrics and the music just flows through their body. I love that. All right, you can reach out to me, 503-248-0620. I am officially tapped out for Laker tickets now after being bombarded by people who want to check it out tomorrow. I had one person reach out that's not too happy with Ben Golliver's time on the show. Favor Flav is so good. Good Lord, this guy you have on must be paid by the NBA. Has he seen the ratings? What a butt kisser. I'm sorry, did you just refer to Ben Golliver as a butt kisser? Come on, man. Why the questions? Luke is a fat clown. AD for him alone would still be a better deal for Dallas. Who cares about him being 25? A clown is a clown. Now, come on, Flav. You don't really believe that was a good deal for the Mavs, do you? And tell me you don't believe that trading Luka straight up for AD would still be a better deal for the Mavs. Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now? Look, whether you like Luka or not, and whether you think he's a clown or not, if the Mavericks are smart, they could have netted multiple first-round picks for him in return. And when I say multiple, I mean like between 5 and 7, because you're trading a top 3 player in the world before he entering his prime. So that's my big issue with the trade. One, okay, you shouldn't be trading a top 3 player in the world, but if you do, and you reach the point where, let's say the Adelson group gets together and like, we're going to have to pay him over $350 million on the Supermax. He doesn't really buy into some of the team functions, and we wish that he cared a little bit more about his physique. We don't want a pudgy, fat basketball player. So let's say they arrive at that point. I'm not saying I agree with it, but if you're going to move him, then the smart thing to do, if you are going to move him, would be to get multiple firsts in return. Because the issue now is they made this deal for one future first and Anthony Davis. Well, if they don't win a championship with AD and Kyrie, and they probably won't, then that's a failure. But then when those guys are done, and they're closer to done than they are just beginning, because they're in the twilight of their careers, they don't have the assets to go out and rebuild the franchise the way that you should when you move a player of his stature. Whether you like Luka or not, and whether you think he's a clown or not, he's still a top 3 player in the world. The 3 best players in the world right now are in no particular order, although I would probably have it be this order: Jokic, Giannis, Luka. Those are your 3 best in the world right now. And it's not just me that thinks that. I think the majority of people within the league would agree with that assessment, that Jokic, Giannis, and Luka are probably the 3 best players in the world. And if you really think Luka's a clown and you want to disrespect him a little bit, you could push him down to 4. Maybe you put SGA there. I have no idea. But regardless, he's a top 5 without question. I think he's top 3 like most. But if you're going to move him, you got to get multiple assets in return. You can't be moving a franchise piece like that and not get multiple picks. So that was bad. Trading Luka was bad. Trading him for 1 first-round pick in the future is really bad. And then what made things worse for the Mavs was the unfortunate disaster of AD playing a game and getting hurt, and now he's out multiple weeks. That's problematic. So there you have it. That's all. But Ben Golliver is anything but a butt kisser. He's not beholden to anyone. Ben Golliver is great because he covers the league. He works his ass off, and he's one of the best I've ever been around at covering the game. He goes to games. He talks to the coaches, talks to the GMs, talks to the players, works his tail off, and he's not some type of hot take artist. So he's not looking to drop hot takes or nonsense. He just tells you how he sees it based on all of the research that he does. And he'll be at the game tonight with the Hornets and the Lakers watching Luka and LeBron. Ben Golliver's awesome. And he got to start here in Portland, started with Blazers Edge and just grinded like a mofo, and then worked his way up to where now he's dominating. He's been at SI, done a lot of different work. Now he's doing Washington Post. Ben Golliver's as legit as it gets. He's not a mouthpiece for anyone. That's not how he operates. Now, he's not going to throw his sources under the bus like most guys. But, yeah, Golliver's legit. And he's a good dude. And he loves hoop. He actually loves basketball. You know, there are some people that cover sports where when I read them, I'm like, do you hate football? Are you not a fan of the NFL? Do you enjoy college football or no? Some people you don't know. For me, I enjoy sports a lot. I love radio and I love sports. I think I probably love radio just a little bit more, but I love sports too. And like I told you before, I go through different phases. Right now, college football is my number one. It's been the NFL. It's been college football. It's been the NBA. It's been college basketball. I enjoy college basketball more when I was younger, when you had guys who would go to schools and remain there for 3 or 4 years. And the reason why is because I enjoyed watching them, getting a chance to know them and see how they developed in college. And then you have 3 or 4 years worth of following a guy before they jump to the league. So you kind of know their story. And when I was growing up, man, you had some, great players. I loved Billy Tubbs in Oklahoma with Stacey King and Mookie Blaylock. The Duke dynasty with Christian Laettner and Grant Hill and Bobby Hurley was phenomenal. And you got to watch all of these guys. Chris Jackson and freaking Shaq together at LSU was amazing. And so I was connected with Jackson. Then he became Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and he was terrific with Denver. One of the best shooters I've ever seen. He was fabulous. So, it's fun. I enjoyed college basketball more then. And now, because of that, I don't have as many of connections with the guys. I do watch, some regular season action, but I'm like everyone else. I'm addicted to March Madness. I think it's awesome. One of the best viewing sporting events that we have in, the NCAA tournament. So there you have it. But Luka, you cannot, come on, Flav. You don't think that was a good deal, even if the Mavs did it straight up. Are you kidding me? Nobody thought that was a good deal as is. But if you were to do it straight up, that's just lunacy. Seriously, it's malpractice. Trading Luka for AD and one future first is malpractice. It really is. But to do it without any picks and just go straight up and think it's still a good deal for the Mavs is craziness, especially when the player they dealt for is now out of action because he's hurt again. And look, I love fat athletes. I've always been partial to them because I respect guys who are a little bit hefty. I think it's amazing that you can have a FUPA and dominate a game. That's all I'm saying. So I'm a big fan of fat athletes. They're my favorite. And I like Luka. I don't want him to be chiseled. I like Luka being a little bit round and being able to ball out like that. It's amazing to me. I like misshapen athletes, and Luka's one of those guys, although I think his weight is being blown a bit out of proportion. He's not Oliver Miller, for crying out loud. He has not eaten himself out of the league. Baron Davis went through stretches where he was lean and dominant, and then he had periods where he was fat and not so dominant, and then he had those awkward in-between phases where he was transitioning from one to the other. And John Bagley is one of my favorite fat point guards of all time. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of fat athletes. I am. It's amazing to me that guys that make that much money don't – I would be in absolute peak condition at all times, but the fact that guys can do that and get away with it is amazing to me. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Michael Holton joining me in studio coming up at 5:20 here on the Rip City Drive.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? Trailblazers are back at it tomorrow night. The Lakers are in town with Luka and LeBron. That tip from Moda at 7. My man Chris Burkhart will have game day at 5 live from Moda on 620 Rip City Radio. Doncic expected to be off a minute restriction when action resumes. They'll play tonight a makeup game with the Charlotte Hornets at Crypto.com Arena. The Trailblazers have 27 games remaining. And remember, all Trailblazer games stream live on the iHeartRadio app. We'll talk with Michael Holton. He's going to be in studio at 5:20. With Kellen Moore taking the head job in New Orleans, the Eagles have promoted Kevin Patullo to offensive coordinator. NFL salary cap going to increase by at least $22 million when the new league year hits in 2025. That, according to reports. And after a meeting, the college football commissioners have agreed there needs to be tweaks to seeding the playoff. Greg Sankey from the SEC said he would vote for a change, but it needs to be unanimous. No word on if the changes will be made for the upcoming season.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, a couple of responses to my thoughts on the Luka Dallas-LA trade. Grant reaches out and says, hey, good trade for the Lakers. My wife and I miss you on TV. That story about your son and his car was great. Well, which story was that? My son's got a lot of crazy stories. Isaac's been quite the character over the course of time. I remember one time when he was younger, and he was playing with, those Hot Wheel tracks. You know, you get the tracks out, they stick together, and then you can, build your own track and put them down the stairs or whatever. Well, he's always been a big fan of vehicles, and so he had a bunch of Hot Wheel cars. And he had the Hot Wheel tracks out, and he had the Hot Wheel cars. And so I was watching him, and he loves Oreo cookies. He still does. He's a big fan of the double stuff. And so I gave him a grip of Oreo cookies, and he was on the stairs playing with his Hot Wheel tracks. And it was just, it was kind of like a naked day. He was just in his underwear. I don't know how old he was, 5 or 6. Whatever age he was, he's on the stairs in his underwear playing with the Hot Wheels and the Hot Wheel tracks. And I looked over, and I was like, oh, no, what are you doing? He reached into his underwear and pulled out something that was very dark, and he put it right in his mouth. So I immediately freaked. And then when I got close, I was like, oh, wait, it's an Oreo. He needed his hands to be free to be able to play with the Hot Wheels. So he was keeping the Oreos in his underwear for safekeeping until he's ready to eat another one. Now, I don't know how moms would handle that, but I admired the ingenuity on his part to be able to find a place to keep his Oreos safe while he was playing with the Hot Wheels. I would say Isaac's got a few other stories, too. I would say probably people's favorite story was this is his first year up at college, up at Bellevue College. And, for Isaac, like a lot of people with autism, he's got very particular food tastes, meaning textures, foods. He doesn't like to experiment too much, but he will on occasion, right? So it's very much the same things. He loves hamburgers, French fries, certain, munchies. Like there's just certain things he'll eat and certain things he won't eat because of texture, taste, or whatever. Well, someone in the family, I don't know who it was, but someone got him stuck on salmon. And one day he called up grandma, and this is where he's up at school. Now, keep in mind, to get him in college, we moved into his dorm room, and what we did is we bought one of those little portable, like deep freezers where you can put it in the room, and the top flips open. And so that way we could store all of his food right there. He would need extra storage space because you're sharing a room with somebody else. And for all the food that Isaac would need, it would take up too much room. So we needed extra storage space so he wouldn't hog the room from his roommate. So we had all of the things prepared for him, so he could just grab it. So basically everything was microwavable. to make it easy on him, and he wouldn't be messing with an open flame or something that could be dangerous. Isaac's pretty good at functioning by himself, but you got to be, you got to be very direct in terms of what he needs to do and make it easy for him. Well, he got in this salmon kick, so he reached out to, grandma and was like asking how to make or how to cook salmon, right? Which is very interesting considering I'd never seen him eat salmon before. And then about a week after that, I get a phone call from his mom, and she's like, yeah, I was just going through some of the receipts, and I noticed that there was nearly $100 charge at Safeway. And she said, I called Isaac, and I was like, what did you spend that much money on at Safeway for? And he goes, oh, yeah, I bought some salmon. And so in my mind, I was thinking, oh, salmon steaks, right? He probably bought some salmon steaks, and that's why he was calling grandma trying to figure out how to cook the salmon so he could eat it. Well, when I went up there a couple of weeks later to restock his food supply, when I went over to the freezer that we had bought, the lid was just barely cracked open. I was like, what in the world? Well, when I opened it up, there was this boat oar that was sticking out of the freezer. And I was like, what is this? And I pull it out, and it's a frickin' salmon. Now, not a salmon steak, but a giant ass salmon. And then I was like, Isaac, what is this? And he goes, oh, yeah, I went down to Safeway, and I love the salmon, so I bought a full salmon. I'm like, you sure did? I was like, how did you get this back to the room? He's like, oh, I just lugged it over my shoulder and carried it back. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So he spent like $100 on a gigantic salmon and just brought that thing back to the house. And they wrapped it up in that, that brown wrapping paper, the fish wrap. So they had it in fish wrap, and it looked like a friggin' boat oar. And it was frozen solid. Like I could have taken that thing out and gone like Gary Sheffield on a baseball. I've never seen anything like it. I'm like, son, why did you buy this? He's like, well, I like salmon, and it makes me feel like a grizzly bear. I'm like, okay. I don't know what to do with that. So we had to encourage him that if he wanted to buy fish, there were other ways to go about it without spending $100 on a gigantic salmon. It's like he just walked down to the freaking Columbia and just yanked that thing out of there. Like, I've seen those big fishes in stores before. I've never bought one. And I've been up there to the market up in Seattle, and I've seen guys throwing those big fish around, but I've never seen one just walk up and be like, yeah, I'd like that fish, please. Would you like us to fillet it? No. You don't need to fillet it. Just give me the fish. All right, let me wrap it for you. And next thing you know, you're walking out with a big boat oar. It's like, Isaac, what are you doing, buddy?
Now that's a story, Chad.
Yeah. And it's a great story when mom and dad are the ones funding the food habits. But then again, there are worse things your kids can get involved in. Some parents worry about the drinking, maybe a little drugs, whatever the case may be. That's not the problem for Isaac. We're worried about giant fish, salmon to be exact. So that was wild. That was a good story. I did share the Oreo story with Nate McMillan. What did he say? He goes, no, that's a boy with confidence. I thought that was pretty funny. So I told Isaac, I said, hey, Coach McMillan thinks you have great confidence. And he's like, well, that's good. Yeah, I guess so. If you can pull an Oreo out of that and eat it with confidence, you got something going on there, my son. So there you go. And that's the story. So Isaac's got plenty of them. A lot of crazy stuff going on with Isaac. What else? Is there anything else that he's done recently that's a little bit bizarre? No, that's pretty much it. He did reach out. Who's the hot golf influencer? Paige Sporanic. So all of a sudden he started asking me a bunch of questions about Paige Sporanic. I'm like, I can understand why he might have interest in her based on what I've seen with my own eyes. I get that. But he was asking me specifics, and he's like, oh, yeah, I've been communicating with Paige. And I'm like, what do you mean you've been talking with Paige? Get out of here. I thought he was pulling my leg. And we joke with each other. I said, are you pulling my leg? He goes, no, it's no leg pull. And if Isaac tells me no leg pull, that means he's being serious. And so he showed me, he hit her up on like some app, like WhatsApp or something. So, yeah, he was communicating with Paige and talking about golf and how his dad loves to play golf and all this stuff. I'm like, good gracious. So Isaac's had a firsthand conversation with Paige Sporanic. And then my dad, he's like, well, who's this Paige Sporanic? And why does Isaac have so much interest in her? I said, well, just Google her and then get back to me on that. So he Googled Paige, and then he just hit me back and said, well, now I understand why he has so much interest in her. I was like, yeah, pretty much. Even Grandpa was able to figure that one out. Good work, Isaac. Giant fish, Paige Sporanic, and Oreos in his underwear. That's how he rolls. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Michael Holton coming in studio here in a few minutes for Holton on Hoops. Got to talk with him about Scoot Henderson's development. What else does he want to see from Scoot the rest of the way? How does that go down? What does he want to see from Donovan Clingan, who's going to get, many more opportunities to play with 8 now in the lineup? So Clingan will be your starter. I don't know what that means in terms of minutes, but my guess would be 30 plus. That's going to be good because he can continue to work on his touch around the rim. But more importantly, with more minutes played and getting consistent minutes in the lineup, he can continue to work on his conditioning. And with more time, he can continue the process of getting a better feel for the officiating. Now, it's going to be important for him. But I would say the 3 most important guys the rest of the way, Scoot and Shaden, and hopefully they'll get a chance to play together, and Donovan Clingan. The other 2 guys I'm not worried about. We know Tamani Kamara is a budding star, and Denny Avdia is your classic Swiss Army knife. He can do everything. And he's a great teammate, and he fits the culture, and he's been playing great basketball. He and Tamani have been the 2 best players on the team all year. I think Ben Golliver said that he would kind of look at Tamani as kind of their star. And it's one of those 2 who have been the team MVPs. But Tamani's great because his tenaciousness on defense. I love his attitude, his approach, and what he brings to the floor. And then when you get a guy like him and, Avdia in practice, in games, the pressure they bring and what they do for their teammates. Because when you see other guys, really balling out like that and giving everything they got on defense, I think it's contagious. And other guys will step up and do more defensively. And we've seen some of that over the last month, which is nice. I've really enjoyed watching the young guys develop. And then in terms of competition, what will be the approach from the front office in terms of, the vets and how many minutes they get? And will they allow them to play and continue to really give everything they got to see if they can collect more wins? My guess would be yes. I think Joe Cronin said that at his press conference right after the trade deadline, where you want to honor the effort that they've had and the success that they've had by allowing them to continue to compete. And so I think that's pretty cool. So we'll dive into all of that with Michael Holton. And then tomorrow we're back at it. 1 out of 27. They got 27 games to go. Lakers are in town tomorrow night. And the final push is here. A few games to hit before the end of February. March will be incredibly busy. And then you've got the very busy final week of April before the end of the regular season where they jam in like 6 games in 8 days. So it's, like it always is in the NBA, it's a mad rush to the finish line. And then we'll see how things shake out. But player development's critical. Scoot and Shaden's development critical. And Donovan Clingan as well. And those guys getting many more opportunities to play and play big minutes and play together is going to be important and fun to watch, especially if they continue to develop like we've seen over the last month. January was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch those guys compete and have success and to get some feel goods, through a grind of a season. All right, Mike Holton's up next. I appreciate your time. Holton on Hoops. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, always a pleasure to have the one and only Michael Holton in studio for a little Holton on Hoops. And you just told me that you didn't make it to All-Star because you got sick, and you were thankful you were here in town before you got down there and got sick.
Yeah, I mean, bug was going around, and all of a sudden my stomach wasn't right, and I was like, hey, I'm going to have to shut it down. I'm not going to make it. And so I had, obviously a few things set up down there. I had to text a few people, and it's really interesting when you tell people you have a stomach virus because they're happy to hear it from you from distance. Because they don't want to get everybody, hey, man, stay home, hey, get better. So I was able to just kind of shut it down for a couple of days and have a more traditional All-Star break.
You know what I was trying to figure out with the All-Star game? It was different when I was younger, or at least I think it was in my mind, and I've gone back and watched a number of the games on YouTube where the competition in those games was different. So what I'm trying to figure out is how do we get to a point where the players just don't take the game as seriously and we don't see the fierce type of competition? I've got some ideas behind it, but it doesn't seem to be the same as it was back in the late 80s, early 90s.
No, thanks for asking that question, Chad. I'm glad we have a few minutes because I can unpack a thought I've had, and this is the forum to be able to share it. I wondered, I look at the Harlem Globetrotters, and when I was a kid and I would go see the Globetrotters, and they would never miss a shot, and I wondered as I got older, did I become more critical of them or did they become less talented or proficient? But I see the cracks in the armor. Now, why do I say that in response to your question? The All-Star game, once upon a time, was truly a competitive East-West thing.
Yes.
I mean, for bragging rights, and I mean, it was an authentic competition around that narrative. And over the years, that changed.
Yeah. Here's my theory on it. So when, for instance, Magic and Bird, when they came out into the NBA, you had two guys from two different parts of the world who competed for a national championship in college. They get to the NBA. They're in two rival cities, Boston and LA, the two best franchises in the NBA, East against West. And you had guys that did not grow up playing basketball together, competing for the same thing, supremacy in the NBA for the championship and for MVPs. And today, and I'm not faulting the players, you have AAU basketball where a lot of kids grow up together, play basketball together. So when they hit the league and they're around one another, maybe you don't have the same competitive desire to attack one another.
I've got a slightly different take on it. I think that there's so many rewards close to the effort of athletic success. And what do I mean by that? So if you're an all-star level NBA player, A, you've got a big contract. B, you've got endorsements. Mm-hmm. C, you have this. D, you have that. I mean, you've just got so many rewards close to your effort that you end up serving too many masters and you get farther away from authentic competition that drove the recognition and the rewards. And I just think that that's a part of the equation. Now, just thinking about All-Star Weekend and all of the different narratives and media opportunities for people to have opinions, me sitting here now having this one with you, I focus on the one interaction between Draymond Green and Oscar Robertson's response because it really got my attention.
Yeah.
Draymond is Draymond, and he had what he had to say. But I like Oscar Robertson's point of view because Oscar Robertson's point of view is rooted in what you're talking about, authentic competition.
Yes. That's really what I'm looking for. But, things change over the course of time. And, for the NBA, I don't know if they need to really try too hard. I think the All-Star Weekend is more about an industry event where they get everyone together and they hang out. I don't know if the game needs to be great.
No, it's changed. I think we need to accept that it's changed because now, to my point about reward, if you're an NBA player now and you get awarded all-star status,
yeah,
you don't want to now go have a weekend of competition with others at your level. You want to have a weekend of celebration for others that have achieved your level.
Yes.
And so the All-Star Weekend has become a celebration of achievement.
Yeah.
And then the achievers don't want to put the skill on display.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's just different. Things change. And I don't want to be one of those old heads that said, well, back in my time, this is the way it was. I respect and appreciate basketball players today, just like I did back then. I'll always be partial to the guys I grew up with because I grew up watching you and all the other guys in the NBA then. So I always look to those guys differently because they were my stars when I was a kid. Today, I still enjoy basketball. Like I was watching Jokic the other night play against Portland. And I'm like, he's as good as any basketball player I've seen with the way he operates out there.
Yeah, and the thing about Jokic that is old school and refreshing, the most important ability is availability.
Yes.
And Jokic plays. He plays every night. I mean.
And big minutes.
When you watch him walk in the arena, he's got on a suit. He's got a stride. He's going to work. I love watching the walk-in of Jokic because he's all business.
He is all business. I enjoy it. Tomorrow night's going to be a lot of fun. Blazers open up their second half after the All-Star break, and it's great to have the Lakers in town, which always brings a bit of a show. But this time, hopefully, they play tonight, so it'll be the second of a back-to-back for the Lakers. I'm hoping LeBron and Luka both play. What are you most interested in watching with those two guys together on the floor?
Well, I mean, I'm on record as saying I don't think it can work. So let me preface what I'm about to say with that. I just think watching two high-usage guys make it work is going to be an interesting dynamic. And so while I question whether it can work, who am I? I mean, to say that it can't work. But I look forward to seeing how it works because LeBron has never given up the basketball, in my opinion. In his 22 years, he's been the primary ball handler whenever he's wanted to be, and he's wanted to be 95% of the time.
I agree.
And Luka is not a second fiddle. He's not Robin to anybody's Batman. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know how that works.
Well, I look at it. Well, look at Kyrie and Luka. I didn't think that would work, and yet they found a way to make it work and got to the NBA Finals. Did you think that would work with those two?
I did, and I'll tell you why. Because Kyrie did the same thing with LeBron.
Oh, that's a good point.
In Cleveland, Kyrie played off the ball and allowed LeBron James to have a high usage to a point where I didn't know how good Kyrie was until LeBron left. And when I saw Kyrie's handle and his skills and his ability to be a floor general, my level of respect for him went way up. I'm like, you're that good and you were willing to get off the ball for LeBron James? And so I knew Kyrie had that in him to do it, and he put that on display in Dallas.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. I'm anxious to see it. For the Trailblazers, you know, they enter this final 27 with some work to do as we continue to watch the young guys develop. I want to start with Donovan Clingan. He's going to get extended minutes now down the stretch because Ayton's going to be out for an extended period of time. I would assume that Clingan will start and probably get, 25, 30 minutes a night? What are you expecting minute-wise from Clingan now that he'll have a chance to play more with Ayton out of the lineup?
Well, I think he's put on display his skill set, which is very solid in terms of defending the paint.
Yeah.
Blocking shots without fouling, defending the paint, being big.
You've told me before you like his positioning on that end of the floor.
Yeah, his defensive positioning, his positional awareness, just as a player, is way above average. And offensively, I think he's figured out some things about offensive rebounding, about how to extend possessions. You know, don't know that he's developed a go-to move yet, but he hadn't had the volume of touches for us to really evaluate that. So to your point, extended minutes, extended consistent minutes, I think we'll see some things offensively that we hadn't really seen, a little face-up jumper, a few go-to moves in the post. You know, but the biggest thing with Clingan is I want to see him play extended minutes, extended games, because, you know, watching him play, and ever since he kind of banged his knee up or whatever happened, he hadn't seemed to have the same stride and bounce to his step that he had earlier in the year. And I was wondering, okay, is it the rookie wall? Is it, you know, and so I just look forward to him just kind of playing through and getting back to that fluidity.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I really like his approach and what he's done so far. I thought it was nice in the 2 games at Denver to see him get a chance to finish and do a better job of finishing around the rim.
Yeah, you know, he's big.
Yeah.
And he's solid, right, in terms of his basketball IQ and competitive awareness. And so what he brings is unique to this team, and because there's only a handful of guys really in the league like that.
Yeah.
You know, that are just big and have positional awareness.
We're talking with Michael Holton on Hoops here in studio on the Rip City Drive. I was talking with Ben Golliver from the Washington Post earlier on the show, and he made sure to mention Scoot and some of the progress he's seen from him over the last month. What do you want to continue to see from Scoot in this process of development the rest of the way this year with 27 games to play?
You know, I think Scoot just needs to continue to keep his foot on the gas and be aggressive. You know, Scoot is playing now, and he's not out there thinking. He's not, you know, passing up shots, thinking. Because when Scoot overthinks, he takes away one of the things he does best, which is be aggressive and attack.
Yeah.
And so Scoot aggressive and attacking, and I just love to see Scoot stay in that groove. And with that may come some turnovers, may come a couple of mistakes, but that's part of that early learning curve at that point guard position in the NBA, and you got to go through it to get the experience.
What was it like for you when you reached the point where you were thinking less and just reacting and being a basketball player like you had done your whole life?
Well, really, it happened for me in college. I realized to stay on the floor. Okay, I couldn't make mistakes. I had to understand what was a good shot for me.
Yeah.
I had to be able to defend. I had to, there were a lot of intangibles that I had to consistently display to be able to be on the floor playing for Larry Brown at UCLA. And I think those things made me a pro. I was able to do the blue collar things, the glue things, to build the coach trust type of thing. So
Yeah.
I played in a safe lane, right? I was never a guy out there, trying to play outside of my skill set or outside of the green light that I had or didn't have. And so that's why when I look at somebody like Scoot, I'm like, this guy's got the whole package. And he's developed his catch and shoot three. He's developed his off the dribble game. He's developed his ability to negotiate coverages in screen roll.
Mm-hmm.
He's developed the change of pace, change of direction to get in the lane. He doesn't leave his feet until he knows what he's going to do. I mean, there's been a lot of developmental learnings that Scoot has put on display over the course of this year. And not to mention that, he defends physically without fouling.
Which is critical. I noticed there have been a couple of people I've talked to that have been impressed with Scoot's defensive improvements over the last month. They're seeing some strides on that end of the floor. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I mean, yes, because his aggressiveness on the defensive end, I thought, led to foul trouble earlier in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was hoping he wouldn't lose the aggressiveness. And he's just learned how to be aggressive and when to be aggressive. When I look at Scoot, and I'm not one of these guys who thinks that every young player in the league has to be compared to somebody that preceded them. But when I look at Scoot, I think about Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
I just think he's got that type of physicality, that type of motor. And, we've seen the kind of career Derrick Rose has had.
Yeah, he's been terrific. The hard part, I think, for Scoot, too, is that he's following Dame. And he's following a player they're not the same type of player, right? Dame was a marksman from distance and a great shooter, and Scoot's game's a little bit different than that. So I think a lot of times you can fall victim of who preceded you at the position.
Well, especially in his situation and timing and Dame and the trade. And, I mean, the timing is what it is, right? But to your point about similarity of skill sets or lack thereof, Anthony Simons plays more like Dame.
Agreed.
In terms of offensive attack, downhill, aggressive, pull up, just really a scorer, a professional grade scorer at all levels, right? Scoot is more your break you down, penetration quarterback type of guy that keeps a different type of pressure on the defense.
Yeah. Shaedon Sharpe, what do you want to see from him over the next 27 games as we finish out the year?
I think Shaedon just continuing to be a two-way player. I think Chauncey really pointed something out that I thought was instrumental in Shaedon developing a very important part of his game, which is play on both ends. And Shaedon has been really good negotiating screens. And when you're looking at guards and you're trying to figure out if they're playing well or they're not playing well, or, the thing to look at is how often does a guy get screened in the numbers? That's the biggest indication of how they're playing defensively. You should never get screened in the numbers. So, in other words, if I'm guarding the ball and a screen comes, I got to either get into the ball handler and ride over the top of the screen, or I got to release and go under the screen. But I can't turn and get screened in the numbers. That's called dying on the screen. And so when I see guys die on the screen, it's the first indication that they don't have the right technique and or commitment level to the defensive end of the floor.
Now, at this level, is it normally a commitment issue, or is it guys who are young who haven't learned the proper technique yet?
Oh, for young guys, it's more technique than it is, commitment. You can't commit to something you don't know how to do, right? And that's why veterans on teams are important. Veteran leadership is important, and that's why coaching and teaching is important. As fans, you look at the game and you go, wow, why does every team have all of these guys behind the bench? Why do they have so many coaches, right? Well, it's because all of those nuances of the game need to be taught, reinforced, and perfected. And that's what all of those guys do, right? They break down tape about how you're getting over screens. They break down tape about how you need to work to get open. The nuances of the game are lost sometimes to the casual observer, but critical to performance.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because now I'm going to watch guys. I've heard you talk about dying on screens before, and I've seen that happen a time or two, but now I'm going to watch for the numbers. I want to see how a guy's dying on the screen. I want to see how that works. And what are they doing to reposition themselves or to navigate that type of traffic? That's
Yeah,
interesting to me.
Yeah, it from a coaching standpoint, to me, it's a red flag, right? You just turn, oh man, switch, help me,
But that's what I love about working next to you during the games and hearing what's going through your mind. Because as a coach and as a guy who played in the NBA and at the highest level in college, like there are certain things that I don't catch that scream at you when they happen.
Yeah, they do, and because
I can ask you like, hey, why did coach call a timeout and pull this guy out? And you're like, well, this is why, because you see it too.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoy the opportunity to be an analyst on television and radio because, you know, I'm a student of the game, but the way that my career went, I was not star quality, right?
Yeah.
At the college or pro level. But because I was a student of the game, I figured out that every team needed a guy that could guard without fouling. Every team needed a guy that could get a team into offense. Every coach values a guy they can trust for game plan discipline. And there's only one guy that's going to lead the team in scoring, and every team's going to have maybe one or two stars. So there's a lot of opportunity in all of those other areas that involve not having the basketball.
Well, I'm going to keep an eye on that. I was glad that Coach Billups, when he benched Shaden, explained why. He said, hey, it's defense. And I expect more from him on that end because he's got a chance to be great. And I like the way he kind of spelled that out and the response we've seen from Shaden so far.
Yeah, and it was rare. And I don't say it was rare like it shouldn't have happened. You generally don't get that kind of transparency in the NBA from coaches.
Yeah.
Because it's a business built around protecting the assets.
Yes.
From accountability or responsibility, not in quote unquote embarrassing the player.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is a strength of Chauncey Billups is a relational teaching style that is credible in the locker room.
Yeah. And what you've pointed out to me too is that when teams make changes like that, where a young potential star gets moved to the bench, that wasn't something that he just woke up with a wild hair and thought, well, I'm just going to bench Shaden tonight. That's a result of conversations that have been had over the course of time that led to that decision making, right?
Yeah, let's just call it asset management.
I love that so much. Now, what about Denny and Tamani? Those two guys, I think, have been the two best players from start to finish for the Trailblazers. But what else would you like to see from those two who have been pretty dynamic for Portland this year?
I think I just want to continue to see them in a leadership position because when you look at the Blazers, at least when I look at the Blazers, to me, they set the tone every night.
Yes.
In terms of how they play offensively and how they play defensively for how the game is going to go. And so Tamani has been phenomenal. Just from the start of the season to now, I felt like when the season started, he was a complimentary offensive player that was comfortable spacing the floor. If he got a shot, fine. He didn't have to have a high usage rate offensively. But over the course of the season, that has changed. He's transitioned into a guy that's willing to put pressure on the defense on every touch. Because the most effective offensive players in the NBA create opportunities before the catch.
Yeah.
If all you're doing is catching the ball and then trying to make something happen, you're going to lessen your opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Does it help when you have guys like Tamani and Denny for what they bring to the practices in terms of adding to the atmosphere and the competition?
Yeah, I would imagine. I'm not at the practices, and I don't know how many practices there are in the NBA at this level, but it is a mindset. It is a culture creator, right? When you have guys that are blue collar, that are competitive, that every possession matters, every practice matters, every weight training session matters. Let's just call it all professionalism. When the tone is set by high-minute guys about work ethic and attitude, then that's the culture of your team.
That's pretty awesome. What was the best culture on a team that you played for in your NBA career?
That's a really good question. I think two places. One, those 31 games I played in Chicago with Jordan were unique.
Yeah.
Because when he was in the gym and on the floor, there just was a level.
Yeah.
Everything leveled up, right? Just because of how he played and how competitive he was. But I was on other teams. When I played here with Clyde and Terry, there was a professionalism around game plan management, right? In terms of how we operated and how we did business. But I think if I was going to pick one team, I'd say when I was on the expansion Charlotte Hornets, because everybody was one turnover away from being out of the business. When you take guys that are 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th men off of a lot of teams and you make a team out of those guys, So some of those guys were high draft guys like Muggsy Bogues. I mean, all of a sudden he's in the expansion draft, so he's still trying to prove himself, right? You know, guys like me that were middle of the bench guys that had just found a role, and now I'm back fighting for my basketball life again. And then you got Kurt Rambis coming off of world championships with the Lakers. So all of a sudden you've got all these different dynamics in a locker room. But when you stir it up, to me, I'll just say it's like potpourri. It smells good, and you don't know why.
I'll say this. I still have a basketball card of you in a Hornets uniform. You look pretty sharp in the Hornets home blue there, or the road blue.
No, the teal.
The teal. My bad.
No, the teal. I'm telling you.
You look good.
I had never seen teal before I became a Hornet, and teal is now my favorite color. Alexander Julian designed the pinstripe uniforms with the purple and the teal.
Oh, that was such a nice look. I loved it. So what years were you in Charlotte then? That would have been like
88 to 90.
88
so I was
to
a
90.
Blazer 86 to 88. Then I went the expansion draft 2 seasons in Charlotte before career-ending back surgery in 1990.
1990. So Mike Schuler was the coach when you were here in Portland then.
Yep, and Dick Harder was the coach in Charlotte.
Hardcore.
Oh.
Talk to Rob Kloss. He'll tell you how hardcore Dick Harder is.
I ain't got to talk to Rob Kloss. I played for him.
He demanded defensive effort, didn't he?
He demanded, not only did he demand defensive effort, he demanded attention to detail in terms of effort and execution. And I love that about playing for Coach Harder.
So he was good for you.
Oh, he was great for me, and I was wired to perform for that type of coach.
Did the players respect him?
Yeah. There was no not respecting Dick Harder.
Yeah, you just respected him. He was hard, but he.
Well, yeah, because he was no respecter. I mean, he didn't care if you were a star or you're 12th man. I mean, you were going to do it right.
But as a coach, part of you's got to appreciate that approach.
No, I definitely I appreciate that. I'd rather have a coach hold everybody accountable to the same standard than a coach that doesn't say anything to the star and then hollers at the 12th man.
Yeah. What are we doing here? I'll tell you what jumped out at me last time we had a conversation, though. Like, we laugh about it, like MJ getting mad at you about asking for the autograph before the game. But then I realized, like, as I was thinking about it, as I was driving home, I was like, MJ disrespected Mike. And you had to make a decision. Am I going to go after Jordan?
Well, yeah, because
he put you in a tough spot.
Well, yeah, because if I could quickly say this, growing up where I grew up and how I grew up, sports was the first place where you earned your stripes or got some respect or you could be disrespected.
Yeah.
So sports was kind of like this pilgrimage to manhood, right? And so it had this level of importance to it that if somebody chumped you at the gym or at the park, you were a chump in the whole community. I mean, word just traveled, right? So basketball meant more than it probably should have for those reasons. But when you're wired that way and you continue to play, that stays a part of your DNA. So I don't care if it's Michael Jordan. You're saying something to me that becomes a manhood thing. We may not have to put him up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to ask you, I know you grew up in L.A., but I don't know anything about your upbringing. Was it tough?
Chad, I grew up in my parents divorced when I was third grade, and my mother moved, and we lived in the projects in North Long Beach, Carmelitas Projects on the Long Beach-Compton border. And I then grew up on the east side of Long Beach, down the street from Snoop D-O-double-G. I mean, I grew up in the neighborhood. And then
so
in
tough streets.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to overhype it, but that's my journey, right? And then in high school, I moved to live with my dad in Pasadena, and we lived in the hood right outside the projects in Pasadena. So I didn't wake up on third and score. I mean, I played and battled and scratched and clawed in neighborhood parks.
Yeah, so when someone disrespects you like that.
Yeah, that's a trigger.
Yeah. Well, it all came together. It's like, oh, now I understand. Like you're telling me the story, and then I was thinking, and then I thought about it. I was like, wait a second, I kind of knew how you grew up based on what you told me before, but now I get it. Yeah, you got to make a decision there.
No, I'm going to meet you at the loading dock, dude.
I love that, though. But like you said, it's part of your journey's your journey.
Yeah, it's part of my pilgrimage to manhood. Respect is respect. The last thing I'll say is, I got 3 things when it comes to interpersonal relationships. 1, I'd like you to like me. 2,
I do.
I need you to respect me.
I do.
And 3, I got a problem with disrespect.
Yeah. I get it. What did you growing up on the playground, like when you're balling, did you go up against some guys who no one knows that were good ballers?
Oh, man, goodness, yes. And every year I was in the NBA, when I would go back to the neighborhood to play, there would be somebody better than me that wasn't in the NBA. I mean, the playgrounds of America are full of guys that can really play and for one reason or another, just didn't matriculate into the highest level.
That's great. I love having you in, man. Michael Holton on Hoops. I'll see you tomorrow night at Motor Center, brother.
Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll come back and finish things out. Big thanks to Michael Holton on Hoops. You got the Rip City Drive. Brenden just made a good point. Michael Holton is a definite role model. What a success story he is. And he wasn't lying. He did not grow up in the best of conditions, but he doesn't let that define him. But to go on to become an NBA player, he coached at U of P. He's been an assistant coach, and he built his own business. He's a tremendous success story. But I love talking with him. I always feel better when I do, but he does provide terrific insight. And he can do so without, throwing certain people under the bus. But I enjoy his insight and the way he talks. I learn a lot about the game through him. And he does talk about guys dying on a screen on a regular basis. And there has been a backcourt not too long ago here in Portland that would dive regularly in screens. But I'm going to keep an eye on that with the numbers. Keep an eye on the players' numbers and watch how they navigate the screens, namely Shaden Sharp. And, of course, the NBA, there's so much pick and roll in today's game. You got, it's a point of emphasis for these teams. They got to do a good job of defending the pick and roll. So big thanks to Michael Holton. Big thanks to Ben Golliver and to Dick Stevens for joining the show to talk about the Portland Golf Show. A reminder, please go to our website, RipCityRadio.com. Go to the calendar page and click on the link for the 50-50 raffle for ALS Northwest. You can buy tickets for the raffle and support ALS Northwest and really help the families who are in need right now, who are caring for those individuals with ALS, to help bridge the gap between what insurance covers and what it does not. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter for engineering the program. Tomorrow, I'll be over at Moda Center, RipCityDrive at 3. It will run until 5. Blazer Game Day with Chris Burkhardt at 5, and the tip-off with the Lakers and Trailblazers at 7 o'clock here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. And remember, all Trailblazers games stream live on the iHeartRadio app. Enjoy your night. I'll talk to you tomorrow.